Hey, this is Brian.
And Shelby.
And you're listening to the Hyperspace
Pod Blast. Aren't you a little short for a podcast?
Huh? Pod Blast? A little Pod Blast? Hey, it is you!
You're so proud of yourself.
No, that was not my best Watto, but oh well.
So welcome back, everyone.
Hello!
What are we talking about today, Brian?
Well, even though I introed with Watto, we're talking about the Force, which Watto has nothing to do with, so.
You never know. We're all bound together by the Force.
True. Maybe that's actually how Toydarians fly. It has nothing to do with their little tiny wings. Possible.
Since
I
it
guess.
kind of defies physics. Maybe.
Yeah, pretty much. But it looks cool. That's what really matters.
Exactly.
Let's be honest. So yeah, the Force. So we're kind of just going to talk about...
How does the Force work?
There you go. How does it work?
Because we know how it... Yeah. We know how it doesn't work.
Exactly. So, Shelbs, when you
Yes.
think about the Force in Star Wars, what do you think of?
Honestly, lifting rocks.
Yeah, that's like...
The first thing, I mean, like, if you said the Force, I'd be like, thinking about lifting rocks. It's what immediately comes to mind. But, I mean, it is so much more.
Yeah.
I agree, but, like, that instant reaction, like, inkblot kind of test.
There you go, yeah. Your Rorschach answer is lifting rock.
Yes. What about you?
Fair. My Rorschach answer would probably be magic, honestly.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think of it as magic. But my long-winded answer is, it's more of a, like, I don't know, they've kind of taken us on a journey with the Force. It started out as, in the original trilogy, kind of like magic, you know, it was this energy voodoo thing that just was out there in the ether, man.
I feel like it's more like that now, but okay.
That's how it originally was. Well, then we got to the prequels, and they basically turned it into a science project. You know what I mean?
Well, we started out with fantasy, then we kind of migrate to science, and I think we've kind of migrated back to fantasy again.
Well, as far as the interpretation, the understanding, but it's all the same thing. So it's
Right.
kind of like one of those, I don't know, something that's always been there, but your understanding of what it is changes.
It's always been there.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry. I'll stop.
But I mean, you can think about it like medicine. I brought this up the other day. We used to do bloodletting. And I have a feeling people probably didn't even know exactly why they were doing that. They're like, I don't know, something's wrong with their blood. So if we get rid of it, maybe they'll get better. You know, of course, now we know the same disease existed, but now we know a better way to handle it. So
Right.
I think the Force is sort of like that. It went, you know, we kind of went backward in time. So the natural progression of how we understand the Force is messed up. That's, I think, what people are kind of getting their circles in the wrong direction. It didn't go from being fantasy to science to fantasy, really. It went from being science to dropping that to being more fantasy, and now it's staying that way.
Maybe.
In, you know,
I mean, I
in
think
the
it probably-
timeline order anyway.
To me, I think probably at the time of the beginning of the Jedi, it probably was very fantasy-like.
Oh, absolutely.
And I
I
think
mean,
it-
I imagine it's like cavemen finding out fire. They're probably like,
Whoa.
what did I just do?
Yeah.
I am a god.
Yep, basically.
Yeah.
Well, what is it that you said before? You were talking about this the other day, that if they're writing things in books.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Like, if the level of technology exists that the Jedi are writing things down in books, like physically writing things down, which is something we've pretty much never seen in Star Wars, like, they probably have no idea about the whole midichlorians or have even any way to check for it.
Yeah, exactly. Even if they knew midichlorians existed, there'd be no technology to actually screen
yeah.
for them.
Somehow they, you know, when the Force first opened up to the first Jedi, it was like, hey man, we're tiny little things in your blood, bro. And he probably thought he was crazy and didn't tell anyone.
Or,
and
honestly, I
moved
have
to
a
an island
feeling-
to live by himself.
I honestly think that midichlorians and testing and things like that came from non-Force users. It came from people who wanted to get a better understanding of why these Jedi could do what they do.
Yeah, I could see it as something like an X-Men comparison where they like scan to see if you have mutant DNA.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of the same sort of scenario, except you don't get a randomly assigned mutant power. You're able to use this Force power that, you know, is more universal than mutants.
Yeah. Or, the Jedi could have themselves wanted to understand what sets them apart. Because, there's always within science, you first find instances of something. You want to know the why.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm sure. And they were probably like, oh, geez, look what we found out. And they probably tried to teach other people and they couldn't do it. And they're like, why can't you do this?
Right.
Look how easy it is. And he pulls his broom to him. He's like, why can't you do that?
True.
Yeah, I imagine that's probably some mix of the two things. Like you said, someone was like, why can't I do this? And then someone else, or the same person was, why can't everyone do this?
Right,
What
exactly.
is it?
And I mean, if you, going back to this comparison of medicine, there were so many trial and error things happening.
Oh, yeah, that's...
And,
most
there's
of
all those,
medicine.
like, quote-unquote wives' tales of, what works to treat things, your at-home remedies.
Mm-hmm.
Some work, but then once science progresses, you understand why they worked.
Right, exactly.
And it's like, yes, they were in line with it, but the whole point was because of this. And it's like, yeah, that one thing you were doing, whether you were putting vinegar on something, it's because of the pH or something like that.
Yeah.
So once you understand that, that's kind of how I see midichlorians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think of it as like, I don't know, we'll get into this more later, I think, but it's kind of like a weird galactic hive mind of tiny organisms that can just like talk to each other all over everywhere.
Right. But now my understanding of the Force is, if you go to midichlorians, I personally really like the scientific aspect. I know some people don't, but I do. But I think of the Force as this kind of like life force kind of thing.
The living force.
The living force, yeah. I think of it as something that is both qualitative and quantitative.
Mm-hmm.
And it exists in a whole different plane of organism / material / just kind of energy.
Right, yeah, it's like, it's both. It's both things. And the reason we don't talk about midichlorians going forward from the prequels is because no one tells Luke about him. It's not going to be written in the old books. We already discussed that. So why would he know,
I mean, I'm sure that most Jedi information was erased.
Yeah, exactly.
The digital stuff,
yeah.
The midichlorian stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the temple was sacked and they took what they wanted and basically obliterated everything else, so...
Yeah, it might exist somewhere, who knows?
I'm sure, yeah, in Jocasta News' little library that Luke happens upon in the comic books, but let's be honest, the comic books are canon light at this point.
Okay, Brian. Let's move on. So, Do you think that the Force changes, or do you think it's just manipulated differently by different users?
I think the Force is the Force. I think it's always been capable of all of these different things that we see happening. But, kind of like Palpatine says to Anakin, the Jedi have this dogmatic view of it, and they kind of think, okay, this is what you can do with the Force, and they write rules and regulations for it, where, honestly, there's probably nearly limitless potential. I mean, that's kind of the cool thing about Star Wars, right? Like, you can do whatever you want, and if someone's like, how'd you do that? Just be like, the Force, duh. And
we'll use the Force.
Yeah, we use the Force for sanitation. But, yeah, I don't know. I think that's kind of why I like the magic comparison, because it's one of those things. It's the catch-all.
It's the corrupt Ministry of Magic.
Yeah,
the Jedi
sort of.
Order.
Yeah. Well, right. Yeah, kind of. I mean, for a Harry Potter example, yeah, it's people telling you, the Jedi were telling you what you can and can't do with the Force, right? And that became sort of the universally accepted way for the prequel area Jedi. And then you had the Darksiders, specifically the Sith. Obviously, Snoke was out there. Someone had to teach Snoke, right? So, like, who was that?
And unless he had this way of understanding what he could do with his innate ability.
True, yeah.
He could have just... I mean, to think that someone who has the Force, like Broom Boy, can figure out some things that he can do with it.
Well, right. I mean, people stumble onto random abilities all the time.
Exactly. I mean, think about it as far as, someone who never goes to school, but is able to understand from the world around them different concepts. without ever, it's like whenever you see civilization, if you're studying civilization, how different people in different parts of the world who've never talked to each other coming to the same, hypothesis.
Yeah, or figuring out irrigation, things like that, figuring out language. It's
exactly.
It might be different, but it's all structurally, foundationally the same.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good point. It is curious to wonder like who taught the first person to use the Force. Like that's probably something like you said earlier. It's probably all trial and error, unless, like I said, the Force just whispered to him.
Burning bush Force.
Check it out. I'm gonna teach you some cool stuff.
You can show off and impress your friends.
Yeah, and then, like I said, that person thought he was crazy and moved to an island, and that's where Octu was.
Exactly. I agree with you. I don't think the Force changes. I think that what changes is Force users' understanding of the Force, and really just their creativity with how they can use it.
Right, exactly. All of these, like, quote-unquote new things, and people are like, oh, well, the Force has never been able to do that before. Yeah, it has. No one's done it before.
No one's tried. No one's harnessed that power.
Exactly.
No one's, trained to a point where they are in tune with that channel. Or, I think a lot of it comes down to creativity.
Yeah, or has even tried to do it before. You know what I mean? I mean, think about, like, American football, right? It used to be handoff, run, handoff, run, handoff, run. And then someone was like, I'm going to drop back and pass to that dude.
Yeah.
And they're like, wait, you can't do that. And they're like, yeah, I can. The rules don't say I can. Oh, crap. What are we going to do now?
Yeah.
It's just, I guess, and that's kind of a bad example because, the sport evolves. But the idea is it's still the same game, essentially. But anyway.
Right. So within the Force, do you think that there are limitations, or you think just anything's possible? I kind of
err on the side of anything's possible. I think, could they do things that are kind of dumb? Yeah, sure. I mean, little Rebels spoiler here, so close your ears if you haven't watched it. But the wolves take them like through a tunnel that teleports them across the planet. That's kind of goofy.
I don't find that goofy, but it's okay.
But it's cool.
See, from a physics standpoint, I find that brilliant.
Yeah, it's like a cross-dimensional or like...
Which, how is that much different than hyperspace? Please tell me.
Because hyperspace is traveling really, really, really fast in one direction.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. I find it more believable. It's kind of like a quantum leap sort of thing.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking about this for whatever reason recently, having like a Force user that can like Nightcrawler teleport to places as long as he's seen the place and can like tell his midichlorians, all right, break me down into microscopic particles and then rebuild me over here.
Another Harry Potter reference, kind of like Flu Network.
Yeah, or just disapparation or apparition, whatever it's called. Yeah, but similar, I guess another X-Men reference too with Nightcrawler. So we're all over the place today. But
I think really the number one question I think that people have of what the Force can and can't do. Can the Force help you or others defy death?
Yeah, I mean,
I think yes.
Yeah, well, like we said in the previous episode, the dark side doesn't lie, man. Plagueis, I think, could do what Palpatine said he could.
Okay.
The question comes in is...
Well, the manifestation of it. Maybe it is that you can live forever, but it's kind of like a reincarnation sort of thing.
True. And I mean, he did say stop other people from dying. So it's not just
maybe
saving
not yourself
like the Force ghosts type situation. But yeah, I think the limitations really are up to the storyteller, and it's making it fit into something that people are going to find believable / palpable. I think that's the problem we're having now with these, changes to the Force, air quotes, like I always do.
Right. We're probably going to talk Last Jedi. Spoilers, by the way. I guess.
Yeah, at this point,
it's kind of understood.
Think, that ship sailed. But yeah, I mean, to jump right into it, with what Leia does, it's fairly unprecedented.
Really? I don't find that unprecedented at all. Because it's just a different manifestation of the same thing that people have been doing. And trust me, I'm not trying to diminish what Leia has done, but it's pulling.
Right, the Force pulling I'm not talking about. I'm talking about surviving in the vacuum of space.
Well, I mean, that too.
The Force pull is just, trying to pull a large object to yourself in the vacuum of space. You just go to it instead.
Right.
That's that's elementary. That's basically what Broom Boy does, just on a different scale.
Yeah.
But the whole not dying part. But I can see, the midichlorians, maybe they
somehow generate oxygen for her to live for that moment, or like change her composition, or
some kind of bubble around her that keeps her alive. But I don't have a problem with it whatsoever.
By the way, everyone, I may be an engineer, but biology is like something I know nothing about. So if you're a biologist, let us know. We would love to have you on the show.
Absolute. But yeah, that, and then the whole projection thing, this is the one that's just like really mind-blowing, I think, because you have this whole third party doing something to two people sort of unwillingly
more than two.
Unknowingly.
Think of how many people saw Luke.
Well, he was doing that to himself. I'm more talking about Snoke doing it to Kylo and Rey.
you mean Force call.
Yeah.
Force Skype.
Force time or whatever. Yeah.
You mean okay.
Yeah, what Luke's doing, I can understand. That's manifesting a projection of himself. And I can see, like, again, the midichlorians.
Part of me almost thinks of it as, I thought of that whole situation less of a force projection, less than like a force ghost, but more of like a mind trick to all of those people.
Yeah, that's what I was actually going to get into was he actually there? Was there because I mean,
a force apparition, or was he changing the minds and perspectives of all those people?
Thinking they saw him there, or was there something actually there?
I lean on the side of he was able to feel all of those people in the Force and concurrently basically create the same thing and trick them into seeing the same thing. That's kind of almost what I think Jedi mind trick is, in a way. A light version of that. They're seeing or hearing something. Or believing something that isn't actually in front of their eyes. And that's kind of what Luke did, but he did it to all those people. He was able to not even be there and see them himself. He could feel them through the Force and then mind trick them all into seeing the same thing.
I can buy that.
I mean, think of the level of power you would need.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
For them all to see and hear and possibly even feel.
Yeah, that's
a nervous thing. Like your central nervous system, you could trick someone's central nervous system.
When he even leaves, the dice behind, and he touches Leia, and I think she
can tell, I think, in that moment.
I think there's a look of acknowledgement of what's happening. And obviously, she has the Force too, so she might be a little more perceptive.
In tune with it. But maybe someone else isn't.
Kylo should have been able to figure that out too, you would think.
Yeah.
But obviously, I mean...
But he didn't touch him until he had that moment of contact.
Yeah.
That he kind of understood. And the only thing that kind of pokes a hole in my quote-unquote theory is that C-3PO can see him.
Oh, yeah. Dang, I hadn't thought about that.
Unless there's some way, I mean, this may even go back to circuitry and midichlorians and materials versus organic materials. Maybe the midichlorians actually even exist I think midichlorians can definitely exist in non-organic materials.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what they're made out of, right?
Exactly. So maybe he is manipulating something even within C-3PO, but...
That's some mind-blowing stuff right there.
I know, but that's the thing you have to think about, whether if he's force projecting, how can C-3PO see him, whether it's the manipulation idea or even just like a projector sort of idea?
Yeah, I was of the mind that the midichlorians being the omnipresent things they are, this is kind of how I feel about Force ghosts too. Though my big question would be, like, when the 3 ghosts show up at the end of Return of the Jedi, if someone else happened to look in that direction, would they see them?
I don't think so.
You think that's all them talking directly to Luke and not actually appearing there?
Yes.
See, I've always thought they were there, and if someone else,
I think it also has to deal with Luke being in tune with the Force. Anyone Force sensitive could probably see them.
Yeah, when he's in the at the end of the New Hope, or right after he gets Obi-Wan is the he I'm speaking of now. Anyway, when Obi-Wan gets killed, he says, "Run, Luke, run." I think that's just in Luke's head. Like, obviously, everyone didn't hear him say that.
Yeah. So
But
like this echoing voice.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, what?
Yeah, for sure. But I think the visual things everyone can see. That's my point of view anyway. It's like the midichlorians manifesting them. And I think the force projection that Luke does works along the same lines, except that instead of like an open consciousness out within the force, like the force users that pass away that, you know, can just appear somewhere, he's making this happen, which is a much more strenuous thing to do.
Do you think that maybe C-3PO doesn't even see him? He's just reacting to everyone else.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of when you said that. But then why would he wink at him?
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. That's an unanswered question that I think is one of those moments where it's fun to debate.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
have that mystery and not ever have a true answer. I don't want an answer to that question.
Mm-mm.
I like the idea of different perspectives on it.
Exactly.
You know,
how'd he do it? With the force.
With the
That's all we
Force.
need to know.
Yeah. How? I don't know. But you know, another moment in The Last Jedi that about the Force that I find interesting is that moment when Rey is meditating with Luke. It's, to me, I wonder, is that stuff actually happening? Is it all mental? Is it...
Yeah, that part is a little like...
The things growing at the time that she's connecting with it are the
it's like...
Are the ocean waves coming in and destroying that bird's nest, the porg's nests, you know?
Yeah, I don't think all of that is in real time. I think that's just showing you things that happen. That would be my point of view of that. I think she's just basically sitting there on the rock the whole time.
Okay.
But that's me. So I think things can happen in the Force without happening in, you know, air quotes again, real life.
As the same thing as Force Vision and...
Right, yeah, same sort of like,
Mhm.
exactly.
And it's all about the interpretation rather than what you're actually seeing.
Right, exactly. The Force shows you things, but it's up to you to determine what they mean. And it seems like more often than not, people interpret it the wrong way.
Well, I mean, think about it. If you're given a small puzzle piece or a few puzzle pieces and you're expected to fill in the rest, you're going to fill it in with what you want to see.
Mm-hmm. Or in the case of Anakin, you're going to create the thing you don't want to see.
Yeah.
That it keeps showing you.
Yeah, if it keeps showing you what you don't want to see, you're going to try and change it.
Yeah.
And just the act of changing it. I have a question. Do you think that the same outcome would have happened had Anakin been more secure and accepted that fate and tried to come to peace with it and understand his emotions and feelings?
Oh no, it would have been a completely different, like none of that probably would have happened. But I'm of the mind actually that Palpatine was putting that idea in his head. So I'm taking the whole idea of Snoke manipulating Rey and Kylo and reaching into the prequels and saying, big deal, Palpatine did that.
Mm-hmm. He planted the seeds that for both of them that they both would turn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Palpatine was playing Anakin like a marionette from the time he was
a young boy
created, if you believe the legend story. But yeah, I don't know. It's crazy stuff.
So finally, what new untapped potential do you see for the Force in the future of Star Wars?
Well, I think the main thing I've been thinking about is like what I said, the whole Force teleporting. Like, could that be a thing that could happen? I mean, obviously we've seen it basically with the whole wolves thing on Rebels, but could it be something that people can do like in a split second? Or what other kinds of things, like could people do hyperspace tracking? Like, could you track someone? You know,
Through
Luke closed himself. Exactly. Luke closed himself off. But if he hadn't, could Kylo have like sensed him, or Snoke more, you know?
I wonder if that was out of necessity. Honestly, whenever she was talking about you've closed yourself off from the Force, I thought the whole point was, they're going to know where she is. Like, because of that Force connection. I thought that's
going to give him up.
Yeah. I thought that's what was going to happen, and they were going to come to Octu, and that's where, like, stuff was going to go down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would have been interesting. But instead, they went with a different type of scenario with their whole connection.
The Luke, Dagobah, going to save my friends kind of thing.
That too. I'm just talking about the whole like Kylo Rey connection, which I think really happens in The Force Awakens when he's in her mind and then she fights back. And
yeah, that's the thing. People
have
talk
that
about
sort of
that mind bridge.
Voldemort thing going on.
They talk about the mind bridge and that Snoke is the one that's doing it. I think that connection existed in The Force Awakens. That started first there. Because that was the first time that Kylo had his own mind probed.
Yeah, I think
that really scared him.
I think Snoke's able to do it because that happened first.
Yes, I agree.
I think that, like you said, mind bridge or whatever you want to call it.
That connection that can't be unbroken.
Right. They sort of, well, I don't know. I think it's broken. I think the
door shutting, you think that's the break?
Yeah, I think that's symbolic.
Rey probably will actually decide to shut her mind off from him, I think. I think that she can close the mind, even the door in her mind, as we saw physically.
Yeah, I think both things were happening.
Kind of like how Luke shut himself off from the Force.
Yeah, but that's just like she was shutting him out, closing him off. Mm-hmm. You are dead to me type thing. I think that's what that sort of visual metaphor was going for there.
Yeah.
Because, at that point, Kylo's he's not looking at her, but he's looking for something. And I think what he's hoping for gets literally shut in his face. Mm-hmm. And then the dice disappear and he finds out that he is literally all alone.
Which is sad.
It is.
Like, I've never sympathized so much for a villain in my life.
Yeah. I think Anakin was somewhat
that's
sympathetic.
True, yeah. Honestly, I still feel bad for Anakin. Yeah. Like, no matter what he's done, I feel bad for him. But there's something just really sad about Kylo. I think it's because, we never see it, like, his decisions as being for the right reason. And that, it's all for nothing. It's not like Anakin, who was trying to save his wife and mother of his children.
Yeah, Anakin's a good example of the road to hell being paved with the best intentions.
Poor Kylo has been, ousted because he thought that he was being hunted, and also he was, at the same time, was being manipulated by Snoke.
Yeah, he was.
It's just that every figure in his life wasn't giving him the exact thing that he needed.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those instances again of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, Luke felt this darkness, saw this darkness inside him, and what he may have actually been feeling was Snoke as Kylo being this sort of conduit to Snoke, and Luke was feeling that through Kylo, thought it was Kylo, did the whole
I'm going to end this before
maybe I should kill my nephew, and then
doing so,
that just started everything. Like, he made all those things that he saw happen because of what he did.
Just like his father.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I think, unfortunately, you know how they say things skip a generation sometimes?
I don't think anything skips here.
No, I'm just saying, like, you have Anakin, then Luke's the guy.
Oh.
And then the thing skips to Kylo. So now if Kylo happens to have a kid, it's going to be a good guy.
Yeah.
And it'll be Kylo's kid that saves the galaxy in the next trilogy. And that's how we'll just carry on this Skywalker line that everyone's so
concerned about.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's about all we have time for.
Yeah, the Force was with us
today.
But
all right. Thanks so much for listening, guys. You can catch us on Twitter if you have thoughts about the Force at hyperspace_pod.
Feel free to always email us about anything at hyperspacepodblast@gmail.com.
Also, check out our cool articles on hyperspacepodblast.com.
And if you're in the need of a little Star Wars audiobook action, and let's be honest, that's one of the best ways to take in a Star Wars book, because the way they do them, it's almost audio drama-esque. They got pew-pews in there and all kinds of background stuff. It's really fun. But anyway, go to www.audibletrial.com/hyperspace, and you can hook yourself up with a 30-day free trial plus one free audiobook.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.
Bye.
Bye.